What's up, gamers? Welcome back to each and every one of you. Today we're talking about a thing that I've seen cause a lot of confusion in the gaming space, specifically in the World of Warcraft space, and that's the World Soul Saga. A lot of people are asking, does this mean we're going to get new expansions every 18 months? What exactly does it mean when Blizzard says more content, more faster? What is going on? How can we expect this to go, and what impact is that going to have on the story overall? So I'm going to go, hopefully, cover all of that in this video, explain it, break it down, because yes, in my streams, pretty much every day since World Soul Saga has been announced, someone will ask. So hopefully this video answers that, and if someone doesn't understand, you can just show them this video and, help me get more views. All right, so before we get into it, let's talk about how World of Warcraft development used to work. So in the old days, there were two teams in World of Warcraft, Team 1 and Team 2. Now, Team 1 would be, and don't really pay attention to the naming schemes here, it doesn't matter, I'm just trying to explain the concept to you. Team 1 in the past would start work on Shadowlands by the time BFA comes out, okay? So now they're starting work on Shadowlands. All throughout BFA, they are developing Shadowlands. Now, by the time, about 6 months or so before Shadowlands is poised to come out, so usually around the time that you start seeing Alpha and Beta, this is where the majority of Team 1 will shift to start working on Dragonflight, with a small skeleton crew basically sticking around to sort out all of the bugs, maybe change some of the feedback options, and obviously Blizzard have the ability to pull some of the people back if there are major problems within the system. So if one of the systems really doesn't work, they can pull a lot of developers from Team 1 back onto the project and say, all right, guys, all hands on deck, we need to fix this system. But if everything is considered to go smoothly, the skeleton crew will fix all of the bugs and sort out, well, what bugs they do fix, because sometimes they don't fix all the bugs, but they'll try to tackle the big issues and make sure that the game is in a viable state by the time the launch date comes around. Once we get into like a couple of weeks before launch, that is when the majority or all of Team 1 moves over to Shadowlands, and that's now all hands on deck working on Shadowlands. And Team 2 will then take over, and they will handle basically all of the problems of Shadowlands launch day, and all of the patch content is made by Team 2. Since a lot of it was already done, so in a lot of cases, Team 1 had already sketched out a lot of the zones that should still come. So in concept, at least, they already exist. Because remember, they do have a plan for where they think an expansion is going to go. So Team 2 really is just the ones that's implementing all of this. And yes, they are building things, dungeons and the like, but they handle patch content. And now Team 1 is off doing Dragonflight. This approach created a number of very real issues within World of Warcraft, insofar as when the majority of Shadowlands is in development, they have no idea what Dragonflight is going to be. Maybe they may have a name, maybe they may have a slight hint at what the story is going to look like, but they have no idea what the actual game is going to look like, what the actual story is going to be in there, because they're still developing Shadowlands. This means that by the time they get to Dragonflight, they now have to deal with all of the things that they did in Shadowlands and try to adapt that for Dragonflight. And as you can imagine, this usually means that we get giant, what I would call dead space in between expansions. These 6 month or 4 or 5 month periods where nothing is happening as we're going through the PTR, the alpha, the beta stages for the next expansion, and then the next expansion comes out. In multiple interviews onto the new system now, Blizzard have explained that when they say that they want more content more faster, they aren't just speaking about new expansions more faster. What they're talking about is that the content cadence has to be such that there is never a time where the player base is bored, where the player base doesn't know what to do, like those dead space moments in expansions where nothing is happening because it's now alpha and beta for the next expansion. They want to cut back on that. The thing is, a lot of people took away from that, oh, so it is basically going to boil down to about 18-month expansions, because right now we're getting closer to 22 to 24-month expansions. To that, I would say, every single time they were asked about expansion cadence, they were almost reluctant to commit to 18 months. And it almost sounded like what they were more interested in doing was having patches continually until such time that the next expansion is ready. Whether that be 18 months or whether that be 20 months, 22 months, 24 months, 26 months, 28 months, it doesn't matter. But there will always be patches every 8 weeks. Now, how are they actually achieving this? Well, they have added yet another team. Up until now, it was 2 teams, and there's over 700 developers that work on Blizzard. And I'm going to speculate a little bit about why I think that the 3rd team was introduced. But for now, all you need to know is there's 3 teams that currently design the World Soul Saga. Team 1 started working about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. They started working on the War Within. Around the same time, obviously not quite with Midnight, because Chris Metzen only came back about a year and a half ago, and he's only been the creative director, and this is his vision, by the way. So let's be safe and say about 6 months ago, Team 2 started developing Midnight. So at this point, the developers of the War Within already know exactly what Midnight is going to look like. By the time the War Within comes out, Team 3, which is the old Team 2, will now design the patch content for the War Within. They'll work on the patch content, and they'll make sure that the War Within. At that point, Team 1 moves over, and they start developing The Last Titan. Now remember, Midnight is not even finished yet. The Last Titan is now being developed alongside the team that's working on Midnight. So you have this incredible thing where the guys that's already working on The Last Titan know what is in the War Within. They know what is in Midnight, and now they're making the War Within, the Last Titan. So you have a wonderful amount of continuity where every team is developing their expansion with full knowledge of what came before. So there's no longer, hopefully, going to be any of these continuity errors and just stories that seem incredibly out of whack. And then you get these giant retcons that isn't really retcons, but they are really retcons. So hopefully that eliminates all of it. And then, by the way, by the time the Team 2 that is currently developing Midnight finishes, they will start working on the expansion that starts the next saga for World of Warcraft, while Team 2 finishes The Last Titan, so that they can then, or while Team 1 finishes The Last Titan, so they can start working on the next expansion, the second expansion for the next saga, and so on and so forth. Team 3 is the one that hyper specializes in patch content. Now, insofar as cutting down on this dead space, you can already see how that is just automatically going to happen, right? Because there's no way that by the time we reach about a year and a half into the War Within, Midnight isn't finished. It is gonna be finished. And this means that, yes, they can have maybe one patch 11.2.5, and then they will have patch 11.2.7, and then immediately, 8 weeks later, 12.0, right? Which is the pre-patch that leads into, and maybe they'll change the naming schemes. Maybe they'll have patch 11.3, but that is actually the pre-patch for the next expansion. And then 11.3.5 is also part of the pre-patch for the next expansion. And then they'll have 12.0. It doesn't matter, but you can see how it could lead to 18 months, but it could also lead to a bunch of other things. We won't know until we actually get there. They were, like I said, very careful every single time not to tie themselves down. So every single time they were like, we don't want to like, we don't want to get too deep into the weeds on exactly how long expansions are going to last. We just want to say that expansions are going to be exactly the same amount of content, regardless. You're going to get the same amount of content, but they want to remove the dead space, the times where they don't have anything to do. And I think that ultimately is very exciting. It is a good thing. I think overall, it's a great thing. For me, it's a great thing because the story will actually now have a plan, and it will actually play out according to that plan, rather than having these weird moments that doesn't make sense in the story because the developers didn't know what they were going to do XYZ later in the expansion. So now on to the speculation on what I believe the third team's introduction means and why Metzen actually did this. 700 developers is an astronomical amount of developers. And at some point, having that many developers is kind of like trying to herd a bunch of cats. It is impossible to get 700 people to all pull in the same direction. A lot of problems in World of Warcraft can basically be boiled down to too many cooks in the kitchen. Everyone wants to basically prove that their job is necessary, so everyone is over-developing and over-designing systems because they need to prove that, oh, I belong at this company. And what you end up with is a player base that really doesn't enjoy anything you're making because you're trying to justify why you are there. 700 people, no company can run like that. The vast majority of AAA studios have teams working on games that usually go anywhere from 250 to 300, 400 on the very, very large side. So 700 is massive. The story, the same thing. Just yesterday, I had about a 3-hour conversation with an actual author, someone that studied writing at university and have spent the last 20 years in the industry ghostwriting for various people. A lot of her books are on the shelves all over the world, doing very, very well. And she has the critical acclaim. The company that she works for, she's very high up. She's a very good ghostwriter. And we had a wonderful conversation about what is wrong with World of Warcraft writing. And one of the key things that came out of that conversation is that there is no vision. There's a lack of vision. And a lot of that boils down to you just have too many writers having to justify their necessity. And this is why the story pulls in pretty much every which way direction. So the third team's introduction, I think, is Blizzard going, right, we have 700 developers, but what if we cut those developers down into smaller chunk size development teams? So now, instead of having 700 people all having to pull in the same direction, you have 200, 250 people that you have to manage, and they have to pull in that direction. So you have one game director that works on The War Within, and there's 250 developers that work under him. He just needs to make sure that these 250 go where they need to go. You have another one that works on Midnight, and his team only has to focus on Midnight. And then you have another game developer, and his team only has to focus on patch content. And then you have all three of these guys answering to Metzen. And Metzen is the guy that ultimately steers the ship and makes sure that everyone is playing by the rules. Everyone is doing the job that they are supposed to do, thereby creating 3 game studios inside a single team, making it much easier for a game to actually be developed in that way. I imagine it's going to be the exact same thing for the story now in World of Warcraft. Metzen is known, what in writing we would refer to as an architectural writer. Architects are people that basically, they draw out every single element of what the story is going to be. Gardeners are more just, they allow the story to sort of take them where they need to go. And I would say Denuser is probably much more of a gardener type of writer. The problem with games is you can't write games as a gardener. You need an architect. And there's probably 3 teams of writers now, even in the writing room, where, it's smaller writing sizes or writing teams. And each writing team is writing very specifically for an expansion, but within a framework that has been decided upon by Chris Metzen. So Chris Metzen determines where the next story needs to go, what the next story needs to be, and so on and so forth. That's my speculation, at least, as to why I think they added the third team. On the surface, obviously, having more content more faster is a good thing, but I do believe that there may actually have been some structural reasons for why they just knew 700 people is too much. There's no way. If you look at Ian over the last 3 or 4 years, the dude looks like he never sleeps. He looked like a zombie, basically, for all of the last 3 or 4 years. And I think it's because he was trying to get 700 people to go to the same place. And then you would get to the destination, and then you would look back, and half the team is fucked off somewhere. They've gone wandering, and now you're running back, going, all right, guys, come on back, we're almost there. You're just trying to constantly get all these people to go the same way. And now you see Ian, and he's a lot more relaxed, a lot more chill. He's making jokes because he's only running, most likely, the 3 team leads that lead the 3 teams, and then he and Mason works on exactly where the story and stuff needs to go. So that's my thoughts, and I'm going to stop wasting your time now. Please remember to hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, dislike if you didn't, and then if you want to support this channel, $1 a month over on Patreon keeps this channel free from sponsorships that want to sell you shit that you do not need. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, be kind to each other, be good to each other, and I will see all of you in the next one. Peace. 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 Peace.